Forget. I want to welcome everybody today to the Leveraging Operations Hub to Power the Customer Experience webinar. We have a lot of great content for you today. I'm going to get out of the way quickly, just introduce myself and give a couple of quick ground rules. My name is Ari. My pronouns are he and him. For those who have visual impairments, I have brown hair. I'm wearing orange headphones and a blue pullover, and I have just a little bit of a beard today. I am excited to be joined today by Aptitude 8. Connor, who's the CEO and founder of Aptitude 8, who is our elite agency. I think the fastest growing agency today in terms of HubSpot solutions partners. And then also happy to be joined by Jack, who's a solutions engineer on the HubSpot side. And yeah, I'll let them give their intros, but just a little bit of housekeeping. This is the last of a 5-part series about using Operations Hub alongside other hubs and to power up other hubs in HubSpot. We will be sending out the recording and the slides after the fact. So take notes if you want, but don't worry, we will send everything out afterwards. Use the Q&A for questions. Use the chat for excitement, for comments. Raise your hand if you want to get in, speak to the speakers directly, and we'll see what we can do there. And with that, I'm going to shut up, get off camera and mic, and pass it over to Jack and Connor. Take it away.
Thanks, Ari. I am Connor. I am the founder and CEO of Aptitude 8. We're, as Ari mentioned, an elite solutions partner. We do lots of stuff with Operations Hub. So we've worked closely with Ari and the rest of the HubSpot team and have been doing these webinars for a bit. So thank you for joining us. My pronouns are he, him. I'm wearing glasses. I have a beard and curly brown hair. And I am in New York City. And with that, I'll pass it to you, Jack.
Thanks, Connor. So my name is Jack Coldrick. My pronouns are he and him. For anyone with visual impairments, I am a white male wearing a navy hoodie, and I have black spiky hair. And I'm a member of the pre-sales team here in HubSpot. And I've done a lot of these events alongside Connor and worked very closely with Operations Hub. I'm really looking forward to today.
Sweet. We'll jump into this. So per our normal flow for these, if you've come to some of the other ones, we'll do a quick intro on what is Operations Hub, why should you be excited about it, why do we at A8 think it's amazing. We'll do some examples. So we're going to talk about Operations Hub and how you can use it to power the entire customer experience. There are use cases for Operations Hub across every single HubSpot hub, which we touched on each webinar. So if you have not seen those, they are recorded. Feel free to go back and reference some previous ones, but we're going to talk about how, if you are a HubSpot user and you're using a plethora of hubs, how you Operations Hub will add value across the entirety of that customer experience. And then we'll do questions and Q&A at the tail end of this also. So if you do have things you are trying to build, if you have questions on how anything that we cover works or questions on Operations Hub, please throw them in the Q&A. At the tail end of this, we'll go through those questions. We want to hear from you. Jack and I would love to answer anything you guys might have. So whether it's related to the content or anything else that you guys are doing, please drop it in the Q&A. We'd love to chat about it. So to go ahead and kick us off, we'll do a quick overview on what is Operations Hub, and then we'll talk through some of these other pieces. So Operations Hub, with HubSpot, the thing that makes us really excited is Operations Hub helps you connect to and automate anything. So whether you're using the data sync functionality and you're connecting HubSpot to other tools in your stack, whether it's other CRMs, other ERPs, other technologies that you might be using, you can use data sync to sync records between your HubSpot CRM platform and other tools that you might be using. And you can also leverage coded automation to power up anything in the HubSpot platform. HubSpot has amazingly powerful out-of-the-box automation tools. Anything you can't do with those tools, you can custom code, use in workflows, and extend the power of HubSpot overall. So we get really excited because we rarely run into folks that either do not have advanced automation needs or have other technology they might be leveraging. And Operations Hub helps you stitch all of that together and deliver an amazing customer experience, which gets to the next piece of why we think this is important and why it's awesome, which is ultimately breaking down silos between all of your teams, connecting all of those teams to your customer, and ideally delivering a better customer experience for your end customer and a better buying and selling and marketing and servicing experience for your internal employees and users. So Operations Hub helps you achieve this. And that's why we at Aptitude 8 think it's awesome, and why we love working with HubSpot and HubSpot customers across the board. So let's jump into content for today. And so we're going to go through sort of each stage of the funnel and the buyer's journey and an example of how Operations Hub can help you with that stage of the funnel. So we're going to start with the marketing team and the front end and drawing people and engaging them with your business and potentially having the opportunity to convert them as a customer. And so on the front end, if we jump to our next slide here, we're going to talk about live chat. So I'm going to talk about this conceptually, and I'm going to pass it to Jack, and we're going to show you a real life example. But Operations Hub empowers you to use programmable chatbots. So the thing that's awesome about programmable chatbots is you can use the standard HubSpot chatbot, but you can extend that chatbot by having it query additional data in your system. So that programmable chatbot can go and check your product database and serve up if someone says, oh, here's my customer ID number. Awesome. Let us go search through our database, find your customer record, surface different options for you based off of what we know about you, extending to perhaps your ERP, other partner systems. Maybe you co-sell through distributors or any other entity that might be involved in your process. And you can extend what your chatbots are capable of by tapping into other tools in your stack, or by searching and finding information in your HubSpot portal itself that you might want to surface up to that customer. And so if we go to the next slide here, your customer really is coming in and saying, in this example, we're actually going and pulling for which region are you in? Who is your sales rep? Who is your account manager? Who should you be meeting with based off of who you are and your customer ID or any information you provided to us? We are going and finding that particular agent inside of HubSpot. We are fetching their calendar availability, and we are surfacing that scheduling directly to that customer inside of the chatbot. And so with programmable chatbots, you can deliver huge amounts of customization and personalization to that prospect to help you guys sort of convert and move people through. Huge use cases, both across marketing and service here as well. And so with sort of the conceptual context there, I will pass it over to Jack. We'll show you a real example of what these look like, and then we'll move further down the funnel.
Great stuff. So I'll share my screen here. We should hopefully see a chat flow turning up here. So I have two examples to show you. So the reason I wanted to show it too is that we talk about pulling data from a database. Well, let's maybe stay close to home here. The first database we could interact with is indeed the HubSpot CRM, which is a database of all of your contacts, your company's deals, tickets, even custom objects. So in this instance, what I've built out is an order bot. So what I have in my CRM for reference is I've got some orders here. So custom objects that are representing orders. Maybe I'm in e-commerce, maybe I'm in some sort of manufacturing sector or industry, and I'm tracking order statuses within the CRM. Okay. Now, what I can do within HubSpot here is I can build a bot that, you can see, ask various questions. How can we help you today? And give people choices. But more importantly, then off the back of what they choose, we can execute custom code to query data and return some helpful insights. So in this instance, let's preview this bot and look at what it's doing. So you can see here, I want to help with my order. I'm going to choose the option. I'd like an update on my order. It's going to ask me what my order number is. And I'm actually going to say my order number in this instance is 0002, I believe. Just make sure I'm correct here. We should get some information back. So you'll see here what's happened is it's queried the HubSpot CRM using our APIs, and it's pulled back some data into the chat. In this case, the status of my order, the product that it's linked to. And then if I'd like, I can continue the journey and ask additional questions. Now, this is looking at data that lives within HubSpot. Another interesting way to look at using these tools is to query external sources. So here we've got a very similar flow where we're maybe asking someone, would you like any help with a specific product? Or maybe you've got an FAQ bot. And what we can actually do is based on their input, we can run some custom code to query an external source. So let's take a look at how this would work. So you'll see here, we've got our different products that we can choose from. I might say that I'm interested in Operations Hub, and a custom code snippet executes and it queries a third-party database. And what we actually will get back in a moment is a little bit of information. So you can see here, the bot's telling me, perfect. Here's some information about Operations Hub. We've got a nice image there displayed, description, and a little bit of a link there so we can go off and learn a bit more. Do I want any more information? Yes, I do. Maybe I want to look at information related to the CMS Hub. And again, the same thing happens. Custom coded action is executing. It's using that input and it's sending it to an external source. So here we go. We've got some different content coming back. So these are just two ways that you can use it. Fundamentally, what's happening behind the scenes is custom code is responsible for taking that input, sending it outside of HubSpot, or maybe querying HubSpot itself, and then returning some information to the end user. And one thing that's worth noting as well is you'll notice that this is formatted in kind of a unique way, in that I've got an image displayed, I've got some styling on a link and that type of thing. So this is kind of just a pro tip if it helps anyone out there. If we actually look at the coded action here, now, sorry, it's not, I'll try to make this as clear as possible. You'll see in the message I'm returning to the individual. So when I make that request and I return some data, you'll actually see I can include HTML tokens to actually structure how that information is rendered within the bot itself. So you'll see I've added some padding to the image. If I keep going across here, it's a little bit hard to see, but for that link, I've given it a border radius. I've changed the background color. So be as creative as possible. And if you add some inline styling into the response, it can actually create a much nicer experience for your end user. So that's the first way, and by no means an exhaustive list, but gives you a flavor of what's possible.
Something that I love about that example as well is not only do you get a lot of personalization there, but I think you get tons of scalability. Something we run into for a lot of our customers is if you're doing a rebranding or you're expanding your product features or you're doing sort of anything as you continue to grow and scale. And for our producer here, I think that we have an email up instead of the slides, just as a heads up. You may want to stop share and reshare so we have the right ones here. But the thing that's awesome is if you're growing quickly and when you're sort of adding products or editing your product language, with sort of the example that Jack showed, you only need to edit that on that marketing site where you're actually serving content about it versus needing to go track down what are all of our chatbots that say things about this product that we've changed, we've shifted pricing, we've changed anything else. And that chatbot's just going to reference sort of that one global truth on what the most recent product information is. So huge value add also for scalability as we see organizations sort of trying to minimize the complexity of how much they have to update and manage as they continue to grow. Let's move down the funnel into sales. And so in our sales function here, so once we get somebody sort of connected, maybe we qualify them through that chatbot, they submit a form on our site, they come in through any of the channels that we might be working or managing. We now want to be able to get them to the right folks on our team. So in this example, we're going to talk through a custom coded action to assign deals and new leads to the right rep based off of a couple of different criteria. So on this one, we can manage based off of territories. Perhaps you want to do geofencing specific zip codes. We see a lot of organizations that do localized services. Maybe you're sort of selling HVAC or something to that effect, and you actually need to make sure that the rep who can manage and respond to that customer is available and in that area. And so we can look that up in our CRM. We can find out who the right person is, and we can assign them to that all in one custom coded block versus trying to constantly update and maintain this huge branching complex workflow. Additionally, we can manage that based off of whether or not people are in office. So by checking a PTO system, or if you're using an HRIS, we can validate against, are people in office? Are they available? Should we be routing this lead or this deal to them because they can actually take and respond to it. Taking that a further layer here, we can actually go and hit APIs to find out what language is that submission in, what language is that lead coming from, or what region is that coming from. And then we can validate that and we can route it to the folks that can actually serve and support that customer in that region and in that area. And we can make sure that the customer doesn't necessarily have to get pinged around and rerouted. We always want to make sure, especially if we have a global presence, that somebody who can engage with and support and serve that customer is the one that we're connecting them with. And so using coded automation, we can automatically look up, find out what language that is, and route it to the correct rep that has sort of that language in their skill set and is able to deliver it. So I'll pass this over to Jack. We'll go through sort of a coded action and what this kind of looks like inside of HubSpot. And my favorite part of custom coded actions is they live directly in your workflows tool. So you can easily weave that custom code with sort of the out of the box point and click automation that sort of your ops teams and other folks that are managing HubSpot would be comfortable with.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're looking at here, Elon Musk, he's in the news a lot lately. So I always I've got an interest in Tesla as well. So I always like to use Elon as my point of my demo contact. We're looking at Elon Musk record here in the CRM. Now, you'll see here on the left-hand side, we have got a postal code property, and we also have no owner. So no sales owner has been assigned. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to do this manually, but let's also, imagine a scenario where maybe Elon comes to the website and converts and maybe includes his address, and we do that lookup, or he supplies a postal code, whatever the case may be. Now, we'll be looking at the logic behind this in a moment, but if I was to put in, for demonstrative purposes, I kept this simple. So a postal code of number 3, let's say. We give it a second, there's a workflow that's detected that change, that a postal code is known for a contact in the system, and it's going to assign ownership. So if I refresh the page here, you'll see in a moment, we've got an owner here coming in, myself, Jack Coldrick. If I change that postal code to, let's say 8, so someone else's territory, again, the workflow is going to fire, and we're going to see a different owner being assigned. So if we refresh this record now again in a moment, we will see here Carol Danvers. I'm a Marvel fan, so that's yeah. Just you might notice some of the names are you know, Marvel superheroes. But anyway, what's happening here is a workflow is running in the background. So let's take a look at that. You'll see here we have a workflow that's enrolling contacts. So anyone not familiar with workflows, you can define enrollment criteria. In this case, I've said the postal code is known. It could be that they filled in a form. It could be that they, you know, their favorite color is orange. Whatever the case may be, you can get as specific as you like. And off the back of that, then we're executing a custom coded action. Now you'll see here on the right-hand side, what my custom coded action is doing is it's using Node. It's JavaScript essentially. That is the logic is running within. I've my secrets, my API keys that I can use the HubSpot APIs or whatever other systems API I'd like if necessary. I'm including some properties within the code. So there's an input here to say, take a look at this individual zip code. I'm also free to use other properties as linked to that contact if I'd like. So I can add various properties in here. And within the code itself here, and I've kept it quite basic, but hopefully you can see how this would scale. We have various different reps, and we've organized their territories here. And then based on the zip code provided, we're basically assigning it to a certain contact owner within the system. And then ultimately then we're passing back the owner ID to the workflow, and we're then just simply updating the owner property with that owner. And that's what's making this work. So could you do this just with a standard workflow? Probably could, but you're going to end up with quite a huge network of if-then branches and conditionals, and it gets quite hard to maintain. So I think custom coded automation certainly has a role to play in the sales world when it comes to more advanced needs around lead assignment and that type of thing. So I'll hand it back over to yourself, Connor.
Absolutely. And something I think is really awesome, and we run into lots of, we're trying to do this and we're struggling to do this with out of the box automation, and custom coded actions can be a great solution to, I can't get this to work. But to Jack's point, there's lots of situations where you could do it with point and click automation, but it starts to get unwieldy and unscalable. And it's really valuable to be able to code that action once, makes it a lot easier to maintain, makes it a lot easier to scale with you as you sort of continue to grow, which is why we love Operations Hub, especially for larger or fast growing organizations as well. So we're going to jump and we're going to talk about customer success and service. And what we do for folks was we're trying to sort of deliver them value and make them sort of successful with our product, and enable our service agents to deliver awesome customer experiences to any of those folks. So in this example, we're going to talk about what happens. So something that we run into a lot, we have a handful of software applications. Associate is one that we have on here, but we just launched Zebra. We have a whole bunch of them. And so one of the things that we run into is our support agents often work with customers who want to cancel or upgrade. Maybe they're on a free trial and they want to upgrade to a paid account, or they're on an enterprise account and they want to downgrade to professional. And typically what happens outside of the with sort of something like Operations Hub in the mix is you either have to build an admin panel, maybe your service agents need to go log in somewhere else, or maybe they need to submit a request to your product or your IT team to actually go into your product and make these changes. With Operations Hub, we can actually make HubSpot sort of this admin panel for your product. So in this example, you're a software company, but this is applicable. Maybe you are manufacturing or you're e-commerce and you want to go and update an order in another system. If you have that sort of that data and the IDs inside of HubSpot, by making that edit and that change directly to either that contact record, that customer record, maybe you have a custom object for orders or subscriptions. And by making those edits inside of HubSpot, we can push that data into our ERP or into our product and make the updates with that custom code. So Operations Hub allows us to extend what HubSpot is capable of and have it actually be something where our agents or sales reps are working inside of HubSpot. And when they make changes in HubSpot, we're going to go and push that information into another system, and we are going to edit another system. And so that allows us to make it so that our service agents can stay where they're spending their time already. They can be making those changes directly into Service Hub or using automation to execute against those in HubSpot. The other value here is a lot of different sort of systems or products don't have as robust automation capabilities as HubSpot does. And so by layering sort of point and click automation alongside that custom code, we can sort of use HubSpot's automation engine to extend into other tools that we might be able to access. So really, really powerful, awesome way to be able to scale up. Jack, I think that you have an example for our next one and not this one, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes, I do not have an example here, but will be coming in next.
Sweet. So we'll jump down to the next component, which is something I love. And I think a lot of folks, especially it's a newer feature to Operations Hub. It's extremely powerful. I want to talk a little bit about reporting and data sets and what you can do with them. So data sets in HubSpot are an Operations Hub feature. And what they allow you to do is you can build complex reporting all natively inside of HubSpot. So the HubSpot out of the box reporting is awesome. What people frequently run into is being able to do formulas or conditions or complex logic that people are sort of used to doing in an Excel or a Google Sheets. Previously, that was something you would struggle to do inside of HubSpot. And with data sets, you can now accomplish that. So with a data set, you can actually create a set of data. You can add in conditions and formulas and do complex calculations and groupings all inside of that HubSpot data set. And then you can build a report on top of that data set. So this kind of lets you do two things that you can't do without data sets, which are one, you can be creating sort of Excel type reporting and functionality natively inside of HubSpot. The other piece that we run into is typically with larger and scaling organizations, there's always confusion around what data should I use? Someone builds a report on new customers last month, but they didn't exclude the right filters, or maybe they didn't include the right product IDs. And by creating a data set that your ops team or your finance team or your analytics folks or anyone in your organization can create that data set and say, this is the correct data set for customers that have been added in the last 30 days. And then other people in the organization can go and build reporting on top of that data set and know that they have that right base data and right base information to know that everyone's on the same page about what the truth is and what the reporting should be. So data sets are extremely powerful, and you can group data and report across multiple different objects, and you can do really, really cool stuff with them. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Jack and let him show an example of a data set and what you can do with it. But data sets are awesome.
Yeah, brilliant. So yeah, we're looking at my screen again. So you see a dashboard here, nothing spectacular on this dashboard, but I want to focus more on the underlying data sets that are making all of this work. I have very limited data in this portal, so just keep that in mind. But Dataset solves two problems. Number one, I think to Connor's point, it makes it much easier for that super admin or that CRM administrator, that RevOps person, to build more refined reports and build out various functions and calculations within that data set that you're working from. What it also solves for is it means that those data sets are then available for maybe the users that wouldn't be using the CRM to that level of detail day in and day out. And if you think you've got, maybe you're using the marketing, the sales, and the service hub coupled together, you've got people from different arms of the business trying to build dashboards, and they may not necessarily understand what certain ticket properties are relevant or irrelevant or whatever the case may be. So it makes it much easier for them to work with the information they need to build the reports they need quickly and easily. So to just walk you through, firstly, working backwards, we've got two reports here, ARR by industry, where we've got the different industries there, the different tiers of a product, and then we're breaking it down by the different industries we sell in, and we're looking at the ARR over time. We've also got sales person commission based on the tier that they're selling into. What made that possible is, if we look here, we have data sets. Now, these are some that I built earlier. I'm going to build one from scratch in a moment. But just to give you an idea, data sets allows you firstly to create a very specific set of data. So in this case, we are only concerned with the industry MRR and ARR and the tier relating to a specific opportunity. We can use that information then to build out reports. Looking at the commission-based report or commission-based data set, again, we're building calculations off of the data and surfacing that then for our end users to build reports. So if we run through creating a data set, I'm going to create a data set here. The first thing you're going to be presented with is an overview like this. Now, what I'll do is I'll call this example data set, and I'll just call it webinar so we can differentiate. Now, what we can do is we can pull up to 5 different sources from within this interface, very similar to our report builder in that case. So I want to simply look at deals within my system, and I want to look at the companies that are associated to that deals. But you'll see here, there's various other sources that I can pull into this data set to leverage. Now, as and when I'm choosing the different sources, you'll notice this preview table down here is populating with that data. So I've got a nice visual reference as to what I'm working with. And once you've got your data together, we come on to the next stage, which is preparing and then actually, I suppose, working with that data. So on the left here, we've got all of the properties that we've pulled in for our deals and our companies. Now, in this instance, I want to pull in the deal amount. That's going to be important to me. And I'd also like to pull in the company industry. That's also going to be important to me. Now, amount, let's just assume, by the way, that the amount of this instance is going to be representative of MRR, okay, for the purpose of this demonstration. Now, amount is a bit of a generic term, and to an end user, they may not necessarily know what that means. So one of the first things you can do is you can label fields. Small but subtle feature, but it makes it much easier for the actual person building these reports to understand what is actually held within these fields. Amount is a default field for a deal within HubSpot that holds the amount as it relates to an opportunity or a deal. Now, what's more is we can actually then create formulas off the back of that. So you can see here, I've got another field, field number 3. Now I can call this ARR, for example. Now, a very simple operation is that I could insert one of the fields I just added to my data set, MRR, and multiply by 12. That's obviously a very simple mathematical calculation, nothing too amazing there that's going to blow anyone away. But what we're looking at is the MRR, and then we have this ARR down there as well. Very simple. Now, what we can then do is we can create another formula field. And maybe this time we want to call it tier. And what we can do here now is we can actually write some if-then logic to bucket data into groups. So I could say, for example, if the MRR is less than 2,000, let's label that as a starter deal, okay? Apologies, I'm actually already off to a bad start. If MRR is less than 2,000, let's label that as a starter deal. What we can then do is we could say, well, if it doesn't meet that criteria, let's imagine the MRR is greater than or equal to 2,000, and MRR is less than 5,000. We're going to label that as professional tier deal. And then what we're going to say is if MRR is greater than 10,000 or greater than or equal to 5,000, let's just say, we're going to label that as enterprise. And if for whatever reason it doesn't match any of that criteria, it's just not applicable, okay? And we're going to then close that out. Now, you'll see straight away that's validated here. If there was any issues on the right-hand side, I would be alerted to syntax errors, that type of thing. But what I've actually done is I've built a formula, and I've actually used one of the if-then logic here, but there's several, it's a long list of various different operations you can execute in here, not too dissimilar to what you're going to see in the likes of Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets and all those types of spreadsheeting tools. We can use this to work with our data. And indeed now what you're going to see down here is that tier being pulled in to bucket this information. Now, what's more is we can go a layer deeper, and we could actually create another field, let's say, and we could actually create a commission field. And very similar in this instance, what we could do is we could say, well, if the tier is equal to starter, let's just say, well, then what we're going to do is that we're going to take MRR and we're going to say that's worth, I don't know, maybe they get 10% commission on that one. And then, you know, so on and so forth. So we can actually then build this out and say, well, if tier is equal to professional, maybe then they're going to be walking away with a little bit more. So we'll give them 20% in this instance. I have a typo there already. Missing a quote. Here we go. And then finally, if tier is equal to enterprise, we're going to say, okay, well, that's great. Let's give them, they get, let's say 30% commission. Sorry, I've already got a few typos there, so apologies. There we go. And now, so off the back of that now, what we have, straight away, I've got an issue. Let's see what it is. I'm glad this happened because we can actually look at the validation. So let's see what's the problem. Okay. So you'll see here, what we got to do is we've actually got to provide a situation where nothing is met. So we're going to just keep that blank. Still have an issue. Just as is the nature with these demos, I'm just going to revert to an existing one because in the interest of time, and I don't want to make a fool of myself. What we're actually going to end up with is something like this, where we can build a report using the formulas that we've just built out. Now I can build that report then, and essentially what I'm presenting to the end user here is an overview of the fields that are relevant to this data set. So rather than a long list of obscure properties that maybe has nothing to do with their day-to-day operation within HubSpot, they're presented with the information they need. So I could barely say, right, well, let's pull in the industry, let's place it on the y-axis, or maybe more sense to place it on the x-axis. Let's pull in the MRR as it relates to that industry. And let's break it down by the different tiers that we're operating in. You can kind of see here, we're starting to build that model with the data that we would have put together within that data set. So in short, data sets just complements the report tool by giving you much more flexibility in terms of performing various calculations on the underlying data. And ultimately then for your users day to day within HubSpot, it just makes it easier for them to build reports quickly and easily without having to trawl through big long lists of properties and that type of thing, which can kind of just confuse them and take away the efficiency, which has a negative impact overall on the day-to-day running of the business. And I'll pass.
Well, we're going to jump to questions and Q&A. So if you do have anything that you are interested in, curious about, trying to solve for, please throw it into the Q&A, and we will jump to and answer questions that you guys might have. I know I saw one in here from Thomas Lane on averages with data and HubSpot reporting. And I'm pretty sure that that's data sets. And Jack, I'll let you clarify, but I think that you would just do some.
So one of the things right now that we are working on is aggregation within data sets. So whilst you can't bucket data in the manner that we looked at there, and again, apologies for the typos, and thanks, Thomas, you've actually correctly identified the issue in terms of closing brackets and that type of thing. But we are working on aggregation. When we do allow you to aggregate data together, that's when you can begin to calculate averages and the like. So until that is a feature, that is still going to be something that, to be quite honest, is going to be a struggle within the system.
Cool. Another one from Thomas that's also in the Q&A. And Jack, I'll probably also kick this one to you, which is, will we ever be able to expand the amount of packages we can add to the custom code section for Python or Node? Ability to send out emails would be helpful from the code section instead of requiring an offsite server. I think my comments on that would be send the email with a subsequent step in the HubSpot workflow versus trying to do it in the custom code itself. But for the first part of that question on expanding the amount of packages, I would defer to Jack.
Yep. So complete full transparency. Absolutely. We do want to allow individuals to use additional packages within custom code workflow actions. We're not quite there yet. And truthfully, I don't have a timeline to share. I don't work that closely with the product in that sense. But certainly that is a major stop on the roadmap, if you will. To your point around sending out emails. So there are ways to do that. Typically, if you're using transactional email with HubSpot, for example, we support sending emails using the single send API. So you could actually make a request to the single send API within a custom coded workflow action, trigger the send of an email and inject some data into the body of that email. Truthfully, that's only applicable for transactional emails, not marketing emails, which we do not support sending programmatically. But to Connor's point, you could get around that by simply just including a marketing email action within the workflow. And if it's a question of you need a little bit more flexibility in terms of personalizing that marketing email. There's nothing to stop you, doing whatever you like in that custom coded action, querying whatever third-party systems you'd like, and then anything that's returned, storing in some properties and including them for personalization tokens in the body of that marketing email. That's a way to kind of potentially solve for that.
Cool. Another one from Michael Josh is he's a newbie in the SEO field, and he's asking if this platform is related to it. So HubSpot has a suite of SEO tools largely on the Marketing Hub. And some of those examples that we talked about on sort of that programmable chatbot solution could be applicable to sort of that on-site conversion once you're able to draw someone to the site. But HubSpot itself on the Marketing Hub side has a whole bunch of SEO features, which you may want to dive deeper into if you're starting to learn about and get exposed to some SEO functionality for sure. One from Doug, I'm going to grab it in the chat, but if you guys do want to ask questions, please throw them in the Q&A. It's the easiest way for us to be able to keep track and know what we've answered and what we haven't. But from Doug, which is startup raising capital, how can I use HubSpot to find emails for potential investors? Would like to use HubSpot to manage a CRM for this initiative. So HubSpot itself probably won't help you find the emails of those investors. There's certainly other tools out there that can help you actually locate emails that are things that you could either integrate or just sort of export from HubSpot. But in terms of managing your investor process, we've seen customers do that at HubSpot. You can create a deal pipeline for it, track sort of which investors you've reached out to, which investors you've booked meetings with, which investors you sort of actually gotten verbal commitments for. And I think HubSpot would be a great way to do that. And you should be able to do all of that deal management on sort of a free or a starter account as well. So certainly give HubSpot a look for that type of functionality. I'm scrolling through. Jack, I think this is a good one for you also, which is from Shadab, which I hope I'm saying correctly. For non-coding people, which language would you recommend to learn first in context to HubSpot tools? I'm thinking specific to what Operations Hub runs in, and then any resources that you would point out for somebody trying to sort of get into some of that custom coding of actions.
Yes, it's great question, and I'll include some resources in the chat after I answer this for you, Shadab. But I think ultimately you can code custom code actions in either Python or JavaScript. I think for somebody coming in without any prior coding ability, I think Python tends to be the language of choice because it just is easier to read and the syntax makes more sense. But at the end of the day, it's preference. So I potentially would start with Python. In terms of once you've identified the language you're going to work from, how do you upskill in that? So there's tons of internet, there's tons of information out there. There's some good free resources. Free Code Camp is a good one. I actually use that quite frequently, and I also follow them on LinkedIn. They share lots of really interesting and insightful tutorials. Code Academy is another. They have a freemium model. You can pay a monthly or an annual fee, and they have kind of really good interactive based lessons as well that will help you get up to speed. And then obviously you can buy books and that type of thing, or do certificates outside of that. But I feel between the online resources there, you should be well equipped. And what I'd also say as well is at HubSpot, we're constantly trying to run these types of events, these enablement events to help our community understand the mechanics of the tool and how they run. So in February, I ran a few sessions where we focused on use cases, and we built out some examples, and there was no real prior knowledge from a technical capacity required. And we started from scratch and built it up. So I'll share links to those recordings and the code and the decks so that you have that to work off of as well.
Cool. Question from Callie, which is our team has a custom source of lead field on the contact. Our goal is to have a source of lead field on the deal that queries to the first associated contact to the deal, and to keep that deal field updated as the contact changes, if it ever does. So you should be able to do this. What we've done historically is if you do a calculated field that counts the number of contacts on the deal, you would then use that deal counter to be able to know whether or not the number of associated contacts is changed, or vice versa, depending on which record is getting updated. And then you'd have a workflow action that goes and copies a field from that contact to the deal. So I don't remember which object you want to start with to get the copy from, but you should be able to copy that between the two. And then if they aren't associated, which is something we run into a lot, we have an app that we made. I'll put the link in the chat, called Associate, which helps with a lot of those associations. Also, because we've run into similar issues where we're trying to get data from some other object or record in the system and update it on a different record. And Associate lets you sort of like do a VLOOKUP and look those up and then copy and associate those things across. But you would probably do it with a workflow where you're copying data between the two records. And the tricky part is what changes to invoke that workflow. And so we've had a lot of success doing that with a calculated field that's counting the number of records, because you can't use like association created as a trigger for a workflow, but you can do that field that is counting the number of associated records changes or increases. And Callie, when you said roadblock is only the first associated contact, similarly, you should be able to use in your workflow check a box that says like first associated contact has been updated, or that field has been updated. And then don't include in your enrollment criteria, validate that don't copy this over if that box is checked or if that value is populated. If you're struggling to do that with just like a standard workflow, you could certainly do it with a custom coded action by just checking, is this field blank? Has somebody gone through it before? Only update it this time. But I think you might be able to pull that off with a standard workflow action as well. Another one, I'm going to read this, Jack, because I haven't, unless you want to grab one. Otherwise I can,
Sure.
I can pick one and read it to you.
So I'll take, actually, there's a few there that I saw, so maybe I could answer. Thomas, you asked a question there around feedback surveys and that type of thing. Now I haven't tested this, but where I would start, right, is you can create workflows off the back of feedback data being recorded in the CRM, so a feedback-based workflow, and you can run custom code snippets in there. So potentially what I would explore doing there is when a piece of feedback is received, workflow is triggered, custom code can take some of that information, and you're free then to shoot that out to wherever you'd like that to go, depending on the use case. Truthfully, I haven't tested that myself. I'm not sure of the limitations or the roadblocks you might run into, but that's where I'd start. So hopefully that's somewhat helpful.
Cool. Another one from Thomas is a way to trigger a workflow on a page view within the page, working with Meta Conversions API, Lambda function to run, which I've only seemed to be able to run off of a workflow, page view by source. So if you do a contact workflow, one of the things that you can use is contact has viewed page, and then we do things similarly if you're trying to manage the source piece off of like the UTM parameters. So if we're correctly using UTM parameters across other links that might be involved in our sort of discovery process, when somebody clicks on that link, you can query off of that in a workflow that says contact has viewed page URL that equals or contains. So you could do like contains your base string, and then also it contains for whatever UTM parameter for whatever source you're trying to get. And you should absolutely be able to, so we do this a lot for like custom attribution solutions that we build for people, which is like, has someone visited this page and their UTM source contained Facebook or whatever else you want to do, and you should be able to trigger a workflow off of that. You would just do a person has viewed page where URL contains, so that should work.
Great questions though, Thomas, in fairness. Yeah, very good questions.
Yeah, we're loving it, man. This is our favorite part. So bring them on down. I'd love to connect separately with you. So we'll throw, if you go to the next one, we have our LinkedIn's and sort of emails and other stuff on here as well. And shoot me an email, Thomas. I'd love to chat through some stuff. You seem to be building some cool things, so would love to hear from you. And also, feel free to connect with both or either of us on LinkedIn as well. Question from Dion Richardson, which is, I know you briefly mentioned some of the location features. Has HubSpot discussed integrating mapping features for data tracking and reporting? We like to track our engagement in a given area as to account for every possible homeowner. There are, and Jack, I'll let you speak to this. I do know that there are apps in the marketplace and I can find one of them because I don't remember.
I think it's so there is one. I think it's called Map My Customer. that integrates quite well, and it just allows you to, see that data on a map for, maybe you're managing sales, field sales, or you want to just see the locations, where it does bring in that geographic kind of overview. But to answer your specific question, I honestly don't know. It's not an area of the tool that I would be that I would have that much visibility on, so I wouldn't be the best person to answer, and I don't want to misinform you or misset expectation. But what I would say is that, like any company, we're constantly building on the tools and trying to make them better and more powerful. But I think it's probably safe to say that right now, you're likely going to need to use an external solution like Map My Customer, or there's several on the ecosystem. To my knowledge, I just can't think of all the names.
Yeah, the two that we're familiar with that could work here is Map My Customer and then GeoMapper, which are both built for that sort of a problem. I think, remember, HubSpot's a platform. There's the app ecosystem. I wouldn't think about it so much of, does HubSpot has a feature for this specific thing? And I'd look at like, how can I make this work in HubSpot? And the app ecosystem is adding more and more stuff every day. I know we have 6 or 7 apps that are in there right now, and other people are building awesome tools. I don't know Map My Customers or GeoMapper personally, but I know that both of them have functionality that may help you with what you're looking for. So you can find those in the app ecosystem. Cool. Anything else from anybody? Otherwise, looks like I got another quick aside. Somebody in the chat is endorsing GeoMapper. And so I'd check that out. You can find that in the app marketplace in your portal. If anyone has any other questions, please throw them in. Otherwise, I think we're going to move to wrap up. And Ari, I can pass it to you and we can close it out. But this has been super fun. So thank you everybody for coming.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Connor and Jack, as always, for I feel like I learned something new in every one of these sessions. So thank you for walking through that. I want to say thank you to everyone for attending. The recording and the slide deck will be shared. I want to say it as a special thank you and a special shout out to Jack. For those who don't know, this is actually Jack's final meeting at HubSpot. He's moving on to a new adventure in the next couple of months, staying in the world of SaaS and of this type of work. But we are so grateful, Jack, that you have shared your wisdom, your technical abilities, and also just your empathy and your compassion in these types of sessions. So thank you for that. We look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thanks for the shout out. And look, if anyone wants to connect on LinkedIn, more than happy to. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to be involved in these, and it's been really enjoyable. So thanks, Ari.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Jack. Have a good day, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.